Alright, we're going to give it a couple more minutes, see if anyone wants to join, you know, like the two of you that joined. And if anyone has any questions during, or if you're watching this after you have questions, just drop it in the comments, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. Or you can make a separate post as well, and we can get some other people to chime in on it as well. So yeah, give it like 30 more seconds, see if anyone else joins. But yeah, basically today we're going to go over how to fix your ankles. So having strong ankles and enough ankle mobility is more than just stretching, and we're going to talk about that. So building up basically stability in your ankles and your feet, you're going to prevent a lot of injuries in the future. And it's a very common issue that I see with a lot of people, just lack of ankle dorsiflexion. So that's just how far you can push your knee over your toe. Definitely lacking in a lot of clients that I see, and a big component of that is stability. So we're going to kind of break each part down. First, I want to go over just some basic stretches. Doing stretches can definitely help, but it's more about what intent are you going into each stretch with. And the passive holds aren't going to do as much if you're not incorporating a strength component with it, right? So you want that stretching and strengthening. So I'm going to show you a few movements that I like to do and explain the intent behind it. So first one is just a basic weighted ankle stretch. So what I like to do is grab a dumbbell, and I don't have my leg too far back, my knee. So if I'm stretching this left foot right here, my knee is kind of crowded right here. That way I'm forced to push my knee as hard as I can. And that's why I like to grab a dumbbell, just to help force that weight, force my knee over my toe. So essentially that's all you're doing, right? So we're just pushing the knee as far over the toes as possible. Key points for this one, we want to make sure that the heel doesn't pop up, right? Because that is where that dorsiflexion is going to come from, okay? Another thing while you're doing this movement is as you're pushing your knee over the toe, I want you to think about contracting this tibialis muscle, which is that shin muscle, okay? So you're holding, maybe you're contracting it for 10 seconds, relaxing 10 seconds, or whatever cadence you find works for you, or whatever you program for yourself, or whatever, if you're my client, I have programmed for you. Generally, I like to have clients do this for 60 seconds each side. That way you have enough time for that contract and relax, right? So that PNF style of stretching here. And what that is doing is activating the strength in the muscles surrounding that ankle joint, which is really, really important, okay? So you can do that basic ankle stretch, and that's good, but definitely after that, what I would recommend doing is incorporating a movement where you have that ankle mobility and strength component. So what I like to do for this is incorporate split squats, and I'm going to show you the variations of split squats that I like to do, okay? And all of these movements are also key movements that I help clients with knee pain too, right? So a lot of times when we have knee pain, it stems from either the ankle joint or something surrounding the hip joint, and this is a really good way to start to correct that knee pain, right? And that's not the case for every individual, but it's really important to just keep each joint healthy. So if you don't have any pain, still should be doing this stuff anyways. So anyways, let's get back to the split squats. First one I like to do is just purely, we're lowering and we're just pushing the knee as far over the toe as possible, dropping this back knee, right? Holding for a second and then coming back up. So this one is more so focused on the mobility component and that ankle dorsiflexion, right? So less of a focus on, we're hitting the legs, we're trying to get a leg pump, but more of a focus on, okay, I'm activating, right, all the muscles, the shin muscles, my calf muscles, my feet muscles, and I'm pushing back nice and slow, trying to engage this shin muscle, right? So that one, I would say, is more of a movement for that ankle mobility. Another one, a lot of my clients see this one, is the knees over toes split squat. So at first, you're probably gonna notice that you need to elevate your front foot, because the key for this one is to push the knee as far over the toes as possible, but also pushing your hamstring into your calf, right? So this one is obviously a really good strengthener for the quads and all the muscles around the knee. But if you're keeping your foot flat, right, you're also getting that ankle dorsiflexion as well. And as you can see, we have a unilateral movement, or semi-unilateral movement. So that's really good for stability as well, okay? So you'll notice it's harder to balance than you think on this one, especially for the back foot, and it's obviously especially for this front foot. And obviously over time, you can drop, as your ankle dorsiflexion, that mobility gets better, you'll be able to drop the surface, that elevated surface that you're doing these on, and eventually be able to do these from the floor, right? So that's obviously the goal. However, with some people, they just have really fucked ankles, and maybe you've had an injury in the past. You might not be able to get to the floor. That's okay. It's still even more so important for you to build that ankle mobility and stability. Okay, so you'll see that all the moves that, or at least these two strength training moves that I've done, aren't really directly working on the ankles. A lot of it is working on that stability and incorporating that strength component with the mobility. So I really like to preach, you don't have to spend a bunch of time stretching. You can incorporate both at the same time, or you can incorporate mobility into your strength training routine, which mobility is strength training, so it's just a different way to think about these movements. If you have really poor ankles and you're really finding that it's limiting you from a lot of the movements in your program, like more compound movements, like squatting, single leg deadlifting, anything like that. There are a couple movements that I like to program for people just to build up that balance and stability. So first and foremost, I didn't really discuss this in the beginning, training in as minimal of a shoe as possible is going to be your best bet. So if you can train barefoot, do so. I'm going to warn you that if you haven't been doing it and you've been training in like really cushiony shoes, you're probably going to fuck your feet up. So work your way down, or work your way to using less shoe, however you want to call it. So let's say you're training in these really cushiony running shoes. Stop that shit right now and grab some Chucks or something like that, and train in a more flat shoe. I don't know, like Chucks, and there's probably a million different minimalist shoes you can find. Grab a pair of those, go slow, and then once you feel like your feet are strong enough, all right, maybe then let's start doing certain movements barefoot. Maybe you need to start with just bilateral movements, so a bilateral squat barefoot, and then we work to single leg squatting as your foot strength improves. So just increasing the strength in your feet, which, if you think about it, we have been, our feet have been shoved into shoes since we were babies, and our feet, that would be like shoving your hands into gloves and never taking them off. You won't build up any muscles in your hands, just like shoving your feet in shoes. Most people lack all the foot strength or musculature in the foot, or they haven't really strengthened it because there was no stimulus to the feet to get stronger. So it takes a minute, and I really think that this has been one of the most, or the best game changers for me as far as ankle health, is just training barefoot. And I've gotten to where I can do most movements barefoot, and I'm not trying to brag, okay, maybe like a little bit, but I just walk around the house bare feet down, and I hate shoes. Not saying you have to get to that point and be crazy like me, but it's just something to think about. Okay, so let's go back to those balance and stability moves. So one thing I like to do is just basically you're standing on one foot. So if this is really hard for you and you're like this, shaking around, just practice this. Or maybe you need to hold here, okay? So that's just like bare minimum step one. From there, let's do some either like warm-up moves, priming moves, or just bodyweight movements that's putting you on one foot or one leg to build that strength and stability around that ankle joint, right? So one thing you can do is just reach your foot out in all different angles. So you can go out to the side, reach as far as you can, tap, You can go backwards, reach as far as you can, and tap. And then I like to go behind, so let me move over. So behind like this, reach as far as you can, and tap. And then you can work to getting further and further each step, right? So if you try that right now, probably won't, but if you try that, you'll notice like the burning sensation around the ankle, you know, in the foot if you're doing it barefoot, and then in that shin muscle, so the tibialis muscle, which is a really good sign, and it's a sign that it's a really good stimulus for you. Another movement that I would recommend doing is just a single leg toe touch, or so essentially the same movement as a single leg deadlift, right? So one foot's on the floor, right? You're hinging the hips, we have an anterior pelvic tilt, reaching back, and now we're just trying to touch the toe or touch the floor and come back up, right? So you can see my foot wobbling all over the place, right? That's just my brain trying to keep my leg and my foot stable as I'm lifting my other foot up and and going through a movement, right? So this will not only get you stronger, but it's the best way to build that stability in your foot. A couple other movements that I really like to do for ankle health in general, and again, this is probably like one of the more tedious movements, so you don't have to do this, but if you're battling an injury, if you just find that your ankles are shit and you really want to work to improve it, you can do this one. So ankle cars. So with this one, you're basically just moving your foot around that ankle joint, okay? So maybe this actually is a really good movement if you are battling an injury, either around the foot, the ankle, or the knee. So you're just basically trying to invert your foot as much as possible to one side, or rotating around, and then you're going to evert your foot this way as much as possible, okay? So maybe do a couple cycles in one way, and then we're going a couple cycles the other way, right? So just switch it up. So that is, anyone can do it, but I would say if you're well past that point, you don't need to spend time doing these, but if you're injured, or if your ankles, again, are just completely shitty, go ahead and do that, okay? Another component of ankle health that people don't really think about is calf strength, right? And I know like everyone jokes about, like I have bird calves or whatever. Not me personally, I mean I do, but like they're like, oh, I can do whatever and my calves won't grow. Like, yes and no, like are you really training them properly? Are you training them like, I relate it this way, like some people, when they do like core exercises, they do, for some reason, their program goes out, gets thrown out the window, and they're doing like 30 reps for abs, and I'm like, why are you doing that all the time? People do the same shit for calf muscles, like you need to treat it like any other muscle group. So you need to periodize the programming, have some sort of progressive overload. So just a note on that. I'm one of those people who has bird calves, or tiny little calves, and yeah, they're still small, but they've grown from training them properly. So it can help, right? Obviously, like genetics is an important part too. Okay, so the best moves I like for this, which is gonna improve that ankle stability, again, single leg calf raises. This one I would recommend hanging on to something because you're probably gonna fall, and you don't want to look like a dummy at the gym. Okay. So with this one, you want to elevate your foot on a high enough surface to where at the bottom you're dropping your heel down as far as you can, and you should feel a nice deep calf stretch, and you're coming up as high in the ball of your foot as you can, squeezing the calf muscle, and then back down. So honestly, you guys, if you did like 6 reps of this for like 2 to 3 sets, slow and controlled, you're trying to contract your calf muscles as hard as possible, your calves are going to be sore as fuck tomorrow, or whatever you do it. So it's a really good movement, and like I don't want you to be sore as shit, but you just might need to if you actually train them right. But again, like we're thinking about the ankle as all of the muscles that surround it, right? Which was going to help build the strength and stability in the actual ankle joint, okay? So calves are a huge part of that. So that's one, the single leg calf raise. I mean, you can do basic like calf raises as well if that's a little too advanced. Like if you train at home like me, you can just grab some dumbbells, or one dumbbell and just do like a single leg calf raise like this, and you're pushing down on it. You can grab 2 dumbbells, do both legs, just do some sort of calf work. It doesn't need to be every day. Again, it's just like training any other muscle. Like, don't overdo it like a dumbass, and don't underdo it like a dumbass. Not that any of you are dumbasses because you're in this group. Okay, so a couple other movements. These are probably a little more unconventional that you might not have heard of. Tibialis raises. So, like I was talking about with that ankle stretch, we want to think about contracting this tibialis muscle, which is the shin muscle right here. And just a quick note, if you do any type of running, or you're a trail runner, a hiker, you just like to run, either you're doing marathons or you just like to run a couple miles here and there, you need to be doing this movement, because so many times I've had clients who, they come to me, they have shin splints, we do some tibialis raises, we do it for, maybe a couple weeks, and boom, gone, and they never get them again. And that is the cool part. Unless, sometimes if you're like a crazy ultra marathoner, like you're running 100 miles, sometimes it's inevitable because our bodies are literally not meant to do that. But if you like to run, which, sprints are cool, like they're a good thing to do if you can run properly, run like a baby deer, you need to be doing these tibialis raises. You need to be strengthening this muscle, okay? So, my favorite movement for this, probably can't show you too well. Ideally, you have a wall that you're resting your back on, and what you're doing is just lifting, right? So I'm gonna hang on and pretend like I'm leaning against a wall, but you're lifting the toes up and down. So lifting the balls of your feet up, squeezing that shin muscle and down. So again, pretend my back, so basically my head to my tailbone is resting on a wall while you're lifting up, right? That's it. It's really basic. Do like a set of 10 of these if you've never done them, and you're probably gonna be sore, and just it burns the shit out of your legs or your shin muscles. How to progress that? Just walk forward more, right? So you're leaning, so you're kind of like angled out from the wall. It just places more load just from the the levers, whatever you're creating on that one. So that's a really good one, and that's honestly, even if you don't run, you should be doing those, because like this muscle, well, it's a muscle. We should be training it, right? Just like we should be training pretty much every single muscle on our body. So the last one I'm going to show you, and I might throw in a couple more stretches, but again, that's just like, okay, you don't need to do that. If you're incorporating one of these strength and mobility movements, you're hitting, or you're covering your bases as far as ankle mobility and stability. But yeah, I'll go over a few stretches at the end, or maybe like a couple more. But the last movement you can do, tippy toe squats. These are super fun. So these really help strengthen the feet. I would do these barefoot if you can, but again, if you're one of those people who has fucked feet, do it in some minimalist shoes. So basically for this, we're gonna lift up on the balls of your feet, and then you're just gonna go down into a squat, nice, slow, and controlled, right? You're trying to keep the heels up the whole time, right? We're not letting them, whoa, see, it's hard. Not letting them drop, even in between reps. So you're on the balls of your feet throughout. Again, like, this isn't training, or this isn't like, okay, a structured mobility stretching movement, but it's incorporating that foot strength, which is gonna build the stability in your feet, which is going to help your ankle health, okay? Honestly, like, most of the stretches you're gonna see, which I've decided I don't really want to go into more stretches, just because most of the stretches you're gonna see with ankle mobility specifically are going to look like pushing your knee over your toe. So the one I described in the beginning, I would stick with that. Other stretches you can do are mostly for the calf muscles, right? You can just basically take a box or whatever, hang on to it, and just push the ball of your feet into the box and lean forward. You should feel a really deep calf stretch. Again, if you're a runner, probably a really good one for you to do, maybe after your run or something. I would throw in, just if you're a person training in general, probably throw in some calf stretching, because a lot of times what I see is people who have tight calves, which, tight/weak calves, when they're doing like a deadlift, they feel like their hamstring mobility is limiting them, but a lot of that is also the calf muscle. Good mornings as well. A lot of that is the calf muscle. So you're stretching the hamstring into that calf muscle. So it's just a really good thing to think about in general. So yeah, that's it. As far as a routine goes, I'm not going to sit here and like explain it out. What I am going to do is write a little ankle mobility / stability routine, and I'll put it as a PDF, or make it into a PDF / Canva thing, and I'll give it to you guys in the group, whoever wants it. So, but generally it's going to look like probably 2 to 3 sets of each movement. Again, the weighted ankle stretch, probably 60 seconds each side. Remember to contract, relax the shin muscle, and then we're trying to sink further, right? Push our knees further over the toes, the further you get into the set. But again, like rep ranges for all these other movements, probably we'll keep them in the basic 8 to 10 group. And whatever I write as a program, just remember, like, you can do it, but you have to progress it somehow in the future. And yeah, if you do this program forever, like you'll have a basic like maintenance after you've kind of built that strength after doing it initially, but you'll want to progress it somehow. But anyways, I'll write that up. If anyone's asking a question right now, I'm literally on my own, so I cannot see it. But please drop it in the comments, or hopefully, I don't know how Facebook Lives work that well. Pop it in the comments, or I don't know if it pops up on this thing and I can watch it back after. But anywho, or just post it as a separate post in the group. So yeah, cool beans. You guys are awesome for watching. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, post it in the group. We want to get some more engagement, so you guys can help out with that. And listen to the podcast, because we're going to talk a lot about stuff like this, and we go in more in depth on it. And you also have Heather there talking to me as well, so it's not just me. So yeah, cool. Thanks for watching, you guys, and I will see y'all soon.